All right. Hello, 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 hello to everyone. This is Willie with from Save to Sane, our every other week podcast where we discuss everything about religion from a secular standpoint. And so I want to welcome all of you. Let me first begin by apologizing for changing the time today. I had something that came up that was urgent that I had to take care of. So I had to move this back an hour. So I know those of you on the East Coast, because I'm on the West Coast, it's 5 o'clock here. Those of you on the East Coast, thank you for joining me, but I know it's kind of late there. It's about 8 o'clock. Um, uh, so hopefully you are able to join. If you are able to join, please put a message in the chat. Let me know that you are here. But again, I certainly apologize for moving it back an hour. And I think I just recently did this like yesterday or even earlier today. So it was sort of a last minute thing that I couldn't avoid, but I wanted to make sure that I came on here today. Those of you who know who has been with me for the last 2 to 3 years, I normally take a break during the summer and so after, I think I have to go because I do a lot of traveling during the summer, and I just kind of want to refresh as well. So I think after what is this? This is the sixth, and so we'll do the 21st, which would be the week that we go out of town for our first summer trip. Uh, that may be the last podcast we do until August. So we'll be off from late May to late June, late July, late August, or mid August. Sometime in August, we will return. So we probably have one more show to do from here until until the summer. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry. But anyway, this is going to be a good show. The next is going to be a good show as well. So just wanted to let you guys know that as well. Couple of things, as I always start off with saying hello and thank you to a couple of people. The first one being Taisha Essex. Thank you, Taisha. I know you're out there somewhere listening. Hope all is well with you. Um, and then Taisha is instrumental in what we're doing here, why we're doing it, and how we got to this spot here. So thank you. I'm always in debt to her. And then my wife, obviously, she is an amazing, amazing person. Part of the reason she's amazing because she has to deal with me. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but she's a wonderful person. She's 100% supportive, and I certainly appreciate all the stuff that she's done. What's going on, Amanda? Glad to have you with us today, Amanda. Thank you so much for chiming in, and I'll certainly look forward to any feedback that you may have as well. Um, so a couple of sort of, I guess, housekeeping things. Want to promote the book as always, as usual. From Save to Sane, my journey away from Christianity and why Christianity has been detrimental to the African American community. Willie O. Cartwright. You can get this on Amazon for sure. So please pick that up when you get a chance. Amanda said, "I'm here listening, but I'm about to start driving." Okay, that's fine. I'm glad you're listening. So just stay safe while you're driving. And so, what else do I want to inform you guys of? I got nothing that's changed as far as doing any other work. I think I mentioned to you guys that I am now on the board of directors for the Secular Student Alliance. And so we're headed to a conference next month, well, actually July. Well, I think I'm going to be speaking at that conference. So we're doing that. Again, a couple weeks ago, completed the class that I taught for American Humanist Association on the dangers of Christian nationalism. And so we hope that some other stuff we're planning, working with some other people, and some other stuff should be coming down the pike really soon. But today's topic, so let's get into it. Today's topic is life after leaving Christianity, fearless and free. So oftentimes, I always tell you where these topics come from or what sort of spurred the topic. And today, this topic just sort of came from a sort of, I guess, a resting space. I've been in this space for 10 years now. And since I declared, or since I decided to walk away from organized religion, so it's been about 10 years, and living and existing in this country in particular, which it's a relatively religious country. We probably tend to think of it as more of a religious country than what it really is. On the list of most religious countries, I think the U.S. is about right around 100, and that's about halfway. So there are many other countries that are more religious than us, and there's different metrics they use to measure that. However, with that being said, if this is the only country that you've ever lived in, and you are not a religious person, it certainly appears that this is a very religious country, or at least trying to be. And to add to that, certainly if you are African American, it is certainly a religious country because for the most part, with our community, almost everybody that we come in contact with that looks like us are in some form or fashion a believer, whether they are a Christian or whether they are a Muslim, and in some other religions, but in particular Christianity and Muslim. Many of almost all of our people are there, are in that space. And so we are believed again to be the most devout demographic in this country. And uh, from what I can see, that is certainly the case. So this topic, I decided to sort of reflect on what has been my life now as a openly non-religious person, as a person who has openly said that I am no longer a Christian, I'm no longer part of organized religion, and to be more specific, which is important to a lot of my friends for whatever reason I don't know. I have said that I do not believe, and it's true. I do not believe in their God, the Abrahamic God, or any other God that we have created. And that is important when people are having a discussion because it seems that people want to put you in a box, so they want to make sure that they are clear in where you stand. For some people, it is enough for me to say, "Well, I am not a Christian." They automatically consider you to be in this box over here. And for some people, it's in the box of being an atheist or an agnostic. Others want you to be specific about, okay, I'm not a Christian, because there are people who say, well, I'm not a Christian, but I believe in God. I mean, there are people, plenty of people that say that. And then so you ask, well, which God are you talking about? And they say, well, there's only one God. If you're believing in the Abrahamic God, then you are either Jewish, Islam, or Christian. So there's no, and I have to correct people all the time. There's no sense of saying, I believe in God or Jesus Christ is my savior, but I'm not a Christian. It is the very definition of what a Christian is. So those of you out there who don't want to be associated with the name or the label of being a Christian, but still believe that Jesus is the only way, or that Jesus is part of the Trinity, or that the Abrahamic God is your God, then sorry to tell you, but you're still a Christian. You're either Christian, Jewish, or a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim. And when a Muslim, you refer to God as Allah, and clearly, obviously, you don't believe in that Jesus is the Messiah, or you don't believe in the Trinity. So if you believe in Jesus and Jesus as being part of the Trinity or the only way to God, then you are by all means a Christian. Whether you call yourself one or not is something entirely different. And I say that to say because people want you to be specific, and they want me to be specific about the position that I take. And so I am very specific about the position that I take. So again, with that background, the reason for this topic today, living life after leaving Christianity, I should say, fearless and free, is because I was sort of doing a self-examination of what my life has been like the last 10 years since I've said, okay, I'm no longer a Christian. And every aspect of my life has been affected. However, what I have learned is that what some of you have also learned, especially those of you who may have been out of this space for a lot longer, but even some of you who just recently came out of this space, uh, it is not the end of the world that we're no longer believers. My world has not stopped. The things that I need to do uh, for my family, which is just my wife and I am able to do those things. Nothing has been affected from the standpoint of me being able to make a living or survive, those type of things. So it hasn't been to that extreme, but there has been things that I've noticed, things that have happened things now that I notice a lot more because I'm out of the forest, as I say, and now I can see the trees from outside of the forest. That it's at times calls me pause, right? Um, initially with leaving the faith, uh, and I think I've told a story about my mother who at the time she was still alive, but she was extremely devout, and she was a minister at the time. And so for the last, I guess, year and a half of her life, I feel like there was a wedge between our relationship. Prior to that, we had been fairly close. And when I was much younger, we were a lot closer. But as I got older, as some of you have experienced with family and with parents, you becoming an older adult and then your parents, there's oftentimes some conflict there. There's some things that you guys are different. You guys, you grow, you becoming, you're evolving as a human being, as an adult, and so there are just normal differences that you see. And so there were the normal differences that my mother and I had. Um, from the standpoint of, I felt more like I became a sort of a caretaker for her, making sure that everything was good for her. And so those were the natural stresses of the relationship, right? And it wasn't that bad. I mean, my sister, it wasn't all that. But what added to it was the fact that now I had broken away from the religion that she loved and cherished and was the most important thing to her. And so that put a additional stress, more so of a strain and stress on our relationship than anything else. And so for the last year and a half of her life, it was the first time ever in my life that I felt like that she was disappointed. But I had to be true to me. And so that was probably the first thing that changed in this journey, was the relationship that I had with my mother. She said some harmful, some hurtful things to my sister about me. Funny though, because it bothered my wife tremendously. Didn't bother me at all because I was used to my mother saying hurtful things, not necessarily on purpose to me. That's just sort of her personality. She was very she had no filter, and she said whatever she felt like saying, and she felt like she had the right to say it. And so many things I just went in one ear and came out the other ear, and I ignored her on a lot of things that she may have said. And she never said anything really tried to be hurtful, harmful until that point. And because I was just so used to who she was, I sort of laughed it off with the things that she said, but they were indeed hurtful and harmful things. And then I think, secondly, the second thing that I noticed that, and this was probably more surprising than some of the other stuff. And again, those of you who are out there, please chime in. You can add your comments, and we can discuss those as well. Or you can add commentary to the things that I'm saying, or you can share maybe what have been some of your experiences in leaving a religion, and trying to negotiate life outside of religion, especially in this country and within our community. But the second thing that I had noticed, that was a little bit surprising, and I will admit it was a little bit surprising. The number of people who I considered friends, who I had been friends with at this point, I mean at that point for 30 plus years, um, 20 years or whatever, 30, but certainly there were some friends I had had for 30 some years. How many of them were taken aback? Who many of them decided that they couldn't have conversations with me anymore. I actually lost some friends. I actually had people who said, we can no longer be friends because you're no longer a believer. Um, and then I had people who, now the relationship, the conversations became more antagonistic. Um, and I think there were people who sort of viewed me differently. And so that was sort of surprising. And not that I didn't expect that there would be pushback or questions or whatever, but the number of people, and specifically certain people who I viewed, um, or I thought of differently, they expressed themselves differently than I thought that they would about this situation. And on the flip side of that, however, I made a lot of new friends, um, and then people who I had known but maybe had not been necessarily close with or had engaged in a lot of conversation with. We have become closer and friends because they've been in this position or had that position, or uh, that had not been religious and was already there, just not vocal about it. And when they saw that I came out, about my non-belief. I got DM and messages from these people expressing their support and agreeing with me, but just not being able to do it from a public standpoint. And so, yeah, so those were some of the things that initially that I experienced in this. Um, and those of you who've gone through this process, you go through the phases, the steps, right? I was angry at first, believing that I had been lied to about a lot of the things I had learned as a child, as a young person growing up about religion. And then I went to the phase where I wanted to tell everybody how wrong they were and how right I was, and present all of the evidence or the lack of evidence for religion. Um, and then I think I mentioned this before. Some friends of ours, this other couple that we know who still lives in Georgia. Shout them out. I won't call their name, but they had been on this journey a whole lot longer, and they set me down and said, "Well, you're going to go through these stages, you're going to go through these steps, and eventually, you're going to it's sort of going to become, just sort of a non-issue, and you're probably not going to mention it or talk about it unless someone brings it up. You're going to coexist with believers, and you're going to go forth and do your own thing." And that is the case for most people. I decided that it would be something that I wanted to spend the rest of my life in some form of fashion doing. So that's why we have this podcast. That's one of the things that I'm doing to continue this journey. um, those of you, many of you know, I went back to school and got a degree in religious studies. From a secular standpoint, I've taught some classes. Now I'm part of the secular community and organizations, heavily involved in several organizations in the secular community because I want to continue to do this type of work. Um, Fortunately and unfortunately, with the rise of Christian nationalism, that gives me something else to discuss and talk about on these podcasts, because I think that it is certainly a danger to us. But so I went through those phases, and the last phase of sort of just chilling out and leaving alone. I have not gotten to that phase. I don't want to get to that phase. I want this to be part of what I do because I think that it is needed, especially in our community, because there are more and more people who look like me and look like us, um, who are part of the non community, which is, you guys know, NONES. I've written about that a lot and talked about that a lot. But those individuals are people who have said to some form of fashion has walked away from religion, whether it be not attending church anymore, but still believing in a higher power, all the way to those who are openly declaring themselves to be atheists, right? And so and everything in between. So we're dealing with that. Some of the things that now that I notice, um, since I am outside of this experience, is that I'm now noticing how almost everything, especially in our community, there's some form of fashion of acknowledging God or Jesus. I mean, it's just it is. It's. I'm gonna tell you guys about an experience that I had yesterday. So yesterday I was, and I'm part of another organization, speaking organization, and we had our weekly meeting where people get up and speak, and they get critiqued about their speaking. And some of the people in the group, and it's a very diverse group, very diverse, African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, whites, whatever. And so we all decided to go out. Some of us decided to go out and have drinks, and I don't really drink. Go out to this restaurant, and so I ate some food. I don't drink, but I guess it was Cinco de Mayo, and it sort of went over my head. But they wanted to go out, and this is here in just outside of Vegas. So cool. So we're there, and we're talking. We're sitting around the table, and this is to show you the difference between where I came from and what's going on now. We're sitting around, we're talking about everything, traveling, so forth and so on, and then religion sort of comes up. Now, I've been sort of quiet about where I stand on religion with this group because I'm new to the group. I've now been in the group maybe 8 months, and and I sort of mentioned it to one of the African American women in the group, she is cool as can be. And I sort of mentioned it to her. She talked about my speaking, and I told her, I said, "Yeah, I'm doing speaking." I said, "But I don't do the corporate type speeches I had before." I said, "But I don't do now because that's not my area of expertise now." And she mentioned, she asked me what's my area of expertise, and I told her, and she kind of looked shocked. It was like, "Oh yeah, you're right." And so I was like, okay, I don't know if these people are ready. But anyway, yesterday while we were at the dinner, sitting around with, it was actually eight of us because I counted eight of us. As we got into the conversation about religion, and it was a mixed crowd, a couple of African Americans, a couple of Asian people, and then a couple of white people. And out of the eight people at the table, seven of them were non-religious. Everything from I just don't believe, I've stopped believing, to I'm an atheist, to religion has nothing to do with my life. And I came home and I told my wife, I said, living in the South, in particular, Alabama and Georgia, I would have never thought that I would be sitting around with seven or eight people, and out of that group, all but one, was a non-believer, and it was just amazing to me. Um, it was amazing to me, and to me, amazing in a really good way. It just sort of shows you the difference between living in the South and living out West. Just one of the differences. And so when I talk about my experiences, um, one of the things that does not change regardless of the geography that you're in, for the most, it changes somewhat. Let me say it changes somewhat. Um, but as I am active or becoming more active in my local fraternity chapter, we still pray and they still acknowledge God. And I just sort of bow my head. Some of the other organizations or people I've been around sort of do the same thing. So that those things have not changed. It's just the way that I deal with them now, which is basically to ignore it and say it is what it is and go on. Let me say acknowledge some of the people that just come in. Papa Lance, what's going on? Glad to have you. Um, Glad to have you with us. Rooks, is that Kaisha Rooks? I don't know if this is your first time, but if it is, I certainly appreciate it. Glad to have you. Good evening to you. Christine, what is going on? Always glad to see you and hear you. I hope all is well. Amanda says, sounds like you found your tribe. Let me put a pin in that, Amanda. I'm going to come back to that. You said, I love that for you. Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, it is. And so um, we as humans, we're always looking for people who we have things in common with, people that we can talk to, and it's a mindset thing, and it's more than just religion. There's some other stuff too. But Amanda, one of the things I found in living out here is that it suits my wife and I a lot better. And it's not just the religious or the spiritual thing; it's the fact that people sort of leave you alone. You do your thing. It's not trying to put you in a box and not trying to identify what group or category you're in. The diversity is amazing. But I think part of that sort of trying to put you in a box is a lot of that is from religion. A lot of that is are you part of us or are you other? Do you believe the way I believe, or are you part of the enemy? Because understand this: many of these people who are religious, and again, this is whether you're Christian or Muslim, Jewish people not to the same extent, and other people of other faiths not to necessarily to the same extent, but certainly with Christians and Muslims, um, it is this thing of it is the most important thing in their life, right? And if you're not part of them, if you differ in your belief system, then a lot of times they look at you differently. They don't want to have anything to do with you. I mean, I talk about this. I've said this before. I am not a big fan. I have never been a big fan of Steve Harvey for a whole host of reasons. But then one day he said something about he would never be friends with or have a conversation with an atheist, and it just like I was like, "You, this is about one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard." Certainly, that is his prerogative. But what are you basing that on? Are you saying because this person is an atheist, you believe this person is less moral than you? Remember, this is coming from a man who married multiple times and cheated on his wives and so forth and so on. And I don't want to get into all of that. But I'm saying, but what are you basing this on? Why is it that how a person decides to believe or not believe has a bearing on whether or not this is a person that you would, at a minimum, have a conversation with? And so I was already at the point where I was not a fan of Steve Harvey, and I'm certainly not a fan of him at all now, because I just think that is an asinine and backwards as reason as to why you can't be friends associated with someone. Um, so yeah, and so again, standing outside of the forest and being able to see the trees, I noticed a ton of things. I got a call from my sister. Uh, what's today? Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, on Sunday. And then she called me. She called me Sunday. And my sister and I are very close. We're 2.5 years apart. We're extremely close. She's very devout, very religious, but we just don't have those discussions. But she called me because she had one of her childhood friends on the phone as well. And this woman is like a little sister to me as well. Her and my sister have been friends since the second grade, and me and her brother have been friends since the fourth grade. They were like the two of the people that we met when we moved out of the projects. But anyway, we've been friends for, as you can see, long 40 plus years now, right? And she called me and she had a friend on the phone and they were basically asking me about dating. And they would say, like, do you have any friends that we can date? We're in our 50s and we're trying this hard out here in these streets, so forth and so on. And we go on and on, we get into discussions, and their friend is also religious. But she said, she was like, I follow you, your stuff. She said, well, I don't agree with everything. She said, well, you know what? Actually, I agree with more. And then finally, she said, if I was really to start reading stuff, I probably wouldn't be a Christian anymore. That was one of the things that was kind of funny. And again, this is part of my life after Christianity. I'm having these conversations with people about religion, regardless of what side they fall on. We're having these discussions. And then one of the things I said to her, I said, I said, one of the problems is that, you look at the church, and the church is 70, 80% women and kids. And a large part of those, a large majority of those women in the church, African American women, are single. I said, but if you ask them what the first thing that they look for in a man, it's always a God-fearing man. I said, well, have y'all not learned a lesson by now? I said, all these guys that y'all have dated have told y'all that they're God-fearing men. And for whatever reason, they've not been the right one, whether they've been crazy, whether they cheated on you, whether they've been down low, whatever it is. I said, there are some guys out here who don't go to church every Sunday, who's not into the whole church thing and would be great, great people. They're great people. They would treat you well. It has nothing to do with what you believe in or not. I think that's just a facade for some people. And then I said, secondly, if you're scratching off non-believers or people who are not in the church, then there might be somebody out there that's for you. Our morality and how we treat people for us as non-believers is not based on religion, and that makes it better. I mean, I treat my wife well. I don't cheat on my wife because I love her and I don't want to see her hurt. It has nothing to do with believing in a God or not. And there are plenty of people like me out there. We've been married 20 years now, almost 20 years, 19 years. So it'll be 20 years in February, but we've been together 20 years. And so it has nothing to do with that. And so they kind of like laughed and then they thought about it and said, well, you know what? You're absolutely right. I said, and besides, you don't have to, if you're a Christian, you don't have to necessarily date an atheist, but you could date someone who's like, listen, I'm more spiritual. And that means different things for different people. I said, but don't automatically disqualify someone because they don't go to church every Sunday or even because they don't believe in the same God that you believe in. Because we can see in our community that means absolutely nothing in a lot of cases. Um, so again, living this life after leaving Christianity, seeing the things that I'm able to see and have these conversations. Amanda said that's why Christians are scared of education. They know. Yeah. And so you're right, Amanda. So she said if I was to really start reading, and it's funny. So she said that was Sunday, and I was like, yeah, it is what it is. And then last night in the discussion with one of the ladies, she happened to be African American. She's from Los Angeles, but she had lived in Louisiana. But she said, so we talking about, she said, well, I'm not into the church religion at all. I never was. And then we started talking about some of the things in the Bible. And I started telling her about these stories that she had never heard because she had never really read the Bible. And oftentimes, especially those of us of a certain age, we haven't really spent that much time reading the Bible. We've just relied on whatever the pastor or part of the clergy or whatever Sunday school teachers have told us, right? And so I asked her, I said, did you know that there's a story in the Bible where God got mad, where a bald guy asked God to curse some kids because they called him bald? I said, so God made two bears come and kill 42 kids. He's like, where's that at? I said, you never heard that? I said, that's in the Old Testament. It's in the Bible. I said, there's another story. I just give an example of example. I said, there's another story where God literally killed a man because he did not ejaculate in his deceased brother's wife like God instructed him to. And instead, he ejaculated on the ground and God cursed him and killed him. And people at the table had never heard these stories. And it was like, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No." I said, "You can Google it right now. You go to the Bible and find it's in there." I said, "There are more and more and more and more and more stories like that." I mean, that's a whole, he talked about slavery, condoning slavery, and all of that. All that stuff is in there. And so again, yeah, Amanda, if Christians would read and not cherry pick, or if they would read and read with an objective and open mind, I think a lot of people, at a minimum, would have questions and a cause for pause with a lot of this stuff. Because a lot of this stuff just is really, really far out there. And when you really start piecing things together, it really don't make a whole lot of sense. And that's the first step in saying, well, wait a minute, what's going on with this faith and this religion? And is this really what I should be a part of if it says this, this, and this, right? And then you start doing more research and you start researching the history of the religion, where it came from, why it was written, and things like that. And that's how you get to where many of us are now. And so Amanda said, "I'm divorced today because of religion." There are plenty of people. There are plenty of people who are divorced because of religion. There are plenty of people who I used to get on my mother's case about always talking about she wanted to be married to a pastor. And I say, "Hey, how many of these pastors that we see that are involved in infidelity and some other stuff and things and so forth and so on?" But that was like her thing. And, she ended up dating a pastor at one point, one of the many people she dated, who ended up going to jail. She dated another man who was in the choir, but he was on drugs, and so he would sing in the choir every Sunday, high as hell, just totally just lit up. And so it just, yeah, it's crazy. But there are many stories about people who've gotten divorced because of religion. And there's the other side of it. There are women, in particular women, I know it happens with men too, but mostly women, who stay in these abusive relationships because they believe that it's part of what they should do because of the teachings from their church, or they believe that their husband is a man of God, but yes, yet he's putting his hands on you on a regular basis, right? He's beating you, he's mistreating you. There's all types of abuse, and so these women stay in these relationships uh, and try to endure those things because they're been told by the church and members of the church and people of the church and their interpretation of scripture that is their job to stay here. That's crazy. If a man is beating you, why would you stay there? Why would you stay in that relationship? And we see plenty of that going on. And so now I see these things outside looking in, and I try my best at this point not to be cynical. I think one of the things I think early on, I was empathetic and sympathetic because I was like, well, I've been there to a certain extent. I don't think I was ever 100% all in. I think I've always had questions about this story in the Bible, and this doesn't make sense, and no one can explain the Trinity and how that makes sense. I mean, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think I was ever 100% in, right? But I was part of the flock, right? I was a believer, certainly a believer in God and Jesus being the way. But now that and so the first few years, I was sympathetic and empathetic to those people who were still caught up in it. And I said, well, I can understand why they would do that, or I can understand why they would believe that. But the further I get away from it, and the more reading that I do, and the more education that I get, and the more I engage in these type of conversations and this podcast and other things to educate me, the more and more I fight about becoming cynical, and I fight about becoming, easily irritated by many Christians. And then social media is a whole nother thing. The things that I see on my timeline on social media, especially on Facebook, and I think I've said this, we've said this before. Facebook is for old people, and I'm not saying I'm talking about people, oh, I should say older people because I don't consider myself old, but certainly older people. And so people in my generation, Generation X, what I see a lot of is it blows my mind now that I'm 10 years removed from it. And I asked the question, how can we still believe some of this crap? And I'm just like, but did I believe this stuff? Maybe I was younger, but I'm thinking that now we have the internet. Now, even those of us who are, Generation X, even we can take advantage of the internet. Now you got AI and Chat GPT and all of the stuff, and we still believe some of this asinine stuff. Um, Let's see. Amanda said the Bible is boring, Boring, and I'm assuming the way you spell out that stands for something else. Christine said I concur. Amanda. Christine said I have definitely learned my lesson about males who are in religion. Listen, I told my sister and her friend, I said most men don't want to go to church. Don't want to go to church. And she was like, "Yeah, you're right. Well, why is that?" I said, "Well, first of all, we see through the bullshit." Um, and I said, that's why the church is like 70% women and kids, right? I said, unless you a deacon, you go, unless you married and your wife is sort of forcing you to go, then you go, right? I said, but then you got the other side. You got the guys that go because they are, they're looking for women. They're looking for victims. They're looking PREY. They're looking to go to church so they can pray PREY on the women. Because if you're a man and you're looking for a black woman, the church is the number one, probably tied with the club, but the church is absolutely the number one place to go. You have a captive audience from 11 to whatever time on Sunday that you have your pick, right? And so I knew guys who personally went to church just so they could pick up on women. So it's crazy. So yeah, Christine, Amanda said my father, who is deceased, was a bishop and was mentally and emotionally abusive toward my mother. She made a plan to leave him, and the mothers of the church were telling her to pray and not leave. This happens in all of our churches, not just African American churches, but white churches too, right? We've seen this so much because this system, this religion is part of a larger patriotic system, and those people use religion to push misogyny and the suppression and the oppression of women, and that's almost and that is in almost all religions. And let me tell my Christian people something. You may look at the Muslim faith with disdain about these type things and the way they treat women, but you're not that far off. Christianity, the way that they want to have it practiced, is not that far off from the way Islam is practiced when it comes to women, the suppression and oppression of women. If it was up to extreme evangelical Christians, and I would say even some moderate Christians, most women would be in the house having kids and cooking. They would be not they will be, but most Christians already believe that there is God, and then the husband, and then the wife, subservient to the husband. I mean, that's part of it anyway. So trust me, they're not. It's not that big of a difference between the two, and so it is crazy that this happens and that we see this. Amanda said it was sick. Christine said exactly. The same mothers will allow pastors to use their spare bedrooms to cheat on their wives. Absolutely, they certainly will. They would do that. They will also protect these pastors and deacons and other members of the clergy if they found out that they were abusing these young girls. These mothers would be the first ones to protect these pastors and deacons and so forth and so on, and then turn around and blame the young girl, blame her, saying what you were wearing was too suggestive, or how you looked at him, or you flirted. I mean, these girls can be 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. We've seen this over and over and over and over and over again. Those of you who've grown up in the church as a young child, you know these things happen all the time. And so now standing again outside after leaving Christianity, now really seeing those things and thinking more about those things, you get kind of angry because those of us who've seen these things and did not do anything about it, we sort of feel guilty that there's more that we should have done. But now I'm in this position and I'm calling it out as much as I can. Um, Let's see. Christine said most religious people refuse to read the Bible and question what they are reading. Well, that's built into it. They would tell you that don't rely on your own understanding. If you read something that it's like them saying, like, well, you looking and you see this and it looks like a cat, it acts like a cat, it smells like a cat, but now they telling you, well, that's really not a cat because your senses are not telling you the right thing. And so that's what happens. And so that's part of the defense of it. They tell you to do that. And then they say if you question anything, then that's wrong. So you can't question. And then anything else, they would label it as demonic. So if you're having thoughts of, well, why is this doesn't make sense to me, or I need to question this or whatever, A, they won't answer your question. B, they'll say it's demonic, and C, they'll say don't rely upon your own understanding, which is insane, right? Who doesn't rely on their own mind and their own brain, right? That's crazy. Um, Keisha Rooks, Kaisha, and I don't know if it's Kaisha or Keisha. I'm just gonna call you K Rooks because I don't want to butcher your name, and I'm sorry. I apologize. Um, other mom and two children is non-religious. Other family members, friends, and colleagues are super religious. Now I just don't comment on anything where religion is involved. Yeah, and that's the take that most of us are that's the position that most of us in, and even me, someone who's very outspoken about it. There are times that I don't comment on certain things because it is so the conversation and the acknowledgement of God, Jesus, whatever, is so prevalent in our communities about every single thing. You'll drive yourself crazy commenting on everything. Um, and so most people know my position. And for those who don't, like for example, like I talked about my fraternity, when I go to chapter meetings and we get involved in these conversations, even inside conversations where this stuff come up, I don't challenge everything. I don't push back. I don't say, well, no, I don't know. I just listen and I kind of go with it because again, you'll waste a lot of energy and we'll waste a whole lot of time in doing it. And so but there are some who I've had, a private conversation with a few who know my position where I stand on it, or whatever. But it's not necessary for us um, as non-believers to always be out there pushing back on everything because again we'll be doing this 24/7 literally, especially if you're a part of our community. Um, Christine said that lie about the Trinity is the worst lie ever. Creation with no female involved, total insane thinking. So, for whatever reason, recently on social media, I've seen um, more people trying to um, explain the Trinity. One of the things my wife would tell you, one of the things my wife said, these glasses are hurting my ears for some reason. I don't know. One of the reasons that my wife left organized religion, in particular Christianity, was because no one could explain to her the Trinity and make it make sense, right? So we have a friend who, and we love her to death. She has even been to seminary school. And I think one day my wife asked her to explain the Trinity, and she could not. And then she said, "Well, my pastor or I got someone else who can explain it," and they couldn't. My wife and I, the last church that we attended back in like maybe 2015, 2014, 2015, we joined the church and we became new members. This is a true story, y'all. We sitting there, and you guys, are those who are familiar with the church, you know that you could join the church. You got the new members class. So we're sitting in the new members class. Now we are veteran Christians at this point. We have been Christian all our life. But it was a person who had never been Christian. There's a bunch of people in the class, but there's one particular lady. She had never been a Christian in her life whatsoever, and she felt, she had been called, and it was time for her to become a Christian. So she had joined the church. She had been baptized, and so she was in the new members class. And the person who was teaching the class, and this is supposed to be an expert, person who's been part of this, who has done this forever and ever and ever, the new person asked her to explain the Trinity. My wife and I looked at each other like, okay, this should be good. And the lady could not explain the Trinity to her. And the young lady who was new kept asking, I don't understand that. That makes no sense to me. And finally she said, well, you know what? I'm gonna get the pastor or one of the other ministers to explain this to you. And so and so my wife has always said that's one of the things that led her away was that because the Trinity is foundational to Christianity. I mean, without the Trinity and without it making sense, you have no Christianity. It's zero. And so for people who've been in the church for so long, or who swear that they have all this kind of knowledge, even for ministers, because we've met ministers, people of the clergy who've been to seminary and divinity school who cannot explain the Trinity to where it makes sense. That's a non-starter, and that should be a non-starter for especially individuals who are new to the faith. That should certainly be a non-starter. If you're part of a faith, if you're part of a church or denomination who believes in the Trinity but cannot explain the Trinity to you, then that should be a non-starter. Um, and so Christine said, let's see what I said, female involved, total insane. Uh, okay, yeah, it's a teach. Most male see through the BS. Absolutely. And I think, and I get to your next comment, but I think also one of the things I learned early on as a young black man was that before I even got my own household, um, black men, and I would say almost every man, but in particularly black men do not like when another man is telling their wife or girlfriend or woman how their house should be ran. You know, right? I mean, that's a no-no. Like, don't come home to me and tell me the pastor said that I should be doing X, Y, and Z. I mean, I already, as a man, I'm speaking for the men, we already think that most pastors are shady anyway, right? But then when you come home and you telling me, Pastor said that we should be doing this, this, and this. If I'm not going to church with you and hearing the same thing and agreeing, then there's no way in the world you coming home and telling me what I should be doing in this house because this other man. Because here's the thing, and I think that's also a difference, Christine. A lot of women, they put the pastor on this pedestal, like he's the man of God. He's on this pedestal. uh, a man is never gonna put another man on a pedestal. Now, you might be our favorite athlete, but you're a ball, you play ball, but we ain't putting you on a pedestal to where we're like, oh, his word is bond. We gotta listen to everything he say. Absolutely not. And so when you come home and you telling us that this man, because we see him as a man, you see him as a pastor on this pedestal, we see him as another man that's trying to scam you out of some money. You come home and tell us that this man has said that we should be doing X, Y, and Z in our own house. Hell no, that ain't gonna fly. That's not gonna fly. And so that's another reason, Christine, absolutely. And then finally, Christine said, question everything. Um, isn't that the same thing the Bible teaches about the slave master? Obey and pray, God will fix it. Totally. Yeah, all of this stuff is connected, and I make the connection from this standpoint. It is part of a much larger system that we call the matrix. It's a much larger system, and so what we learn from the child from birth is that there is a system in the way things should be done, and there is a hierarchy. And unfortunately for us, because we see everything that is good and that is right being white or looking differently than us, we consciously or subconsciously, in most cases, start to view things that don't look like us as being somehow better. So we start off and our first exposure is that of a white Jesus or a white God or white angels. And so we said, well, wow, I don't see any black angels in every picture I see. Up until recently, every picture that I see of God and Jesus is white. And then we get to school, and most of our teachers are white, police officers are white, and so forth and so on. We look at the television, and most of our favorite actors or whatever are white, so forth and so on. All the richest people that we know are, for the most part, white. We have a few more we know is Oprah and Michael Jordan and LeBron, but these are athletes, and so we see that. But generally speaking, so it's part of a larger system. And so even with slavery, it was about obeying your master, and systematically it's about obeying those that we think are in authority, or believed to be in authority. And that is a system that has kept us docile. And so, like slavery, Christianity and organized religion makes us more so than any other demographic docile. And the more docile we are, the least likely we are to push back on things, the oppression and suppression that has happened to our people, generally speaking, over the hundreds of years, right? And so those in power, they understand the power of religion, especially to us. And so they will send people who look like us, who are religious people, and their job is to make sure that we remain docile, in spite of things that may be happening around us. And so that is part of the plan as well. And so it went from obeying your master to obeying those in authority, so forth and so on. And so now we do it subconsciously. A lot of us, a lot of us think automatically that we're inferior because what we used to seeing is that those who are viewed as being superior always don't look like us. So again, I argue all the time this is part of a much larger thing, and I've said this 100 times that westernized Christianity is the religious arm of white supremacy. And I think now we're seeing this more and more every day. We're seeing what the Christian right, the far right, the evangelicals are trying to do with some of these policies that they're trying to impose upon us. And a lot of these policies are religiously based policies. that's going under the radar. But all of this stuff is part and is all connected. And so I think now, and being outside of religion now allows me to even to be able to see it even clearer now. Um, and I get frustrated because I see other people who look like me who cannot see the program, right? Because they're so blinded by religion. There are African Americans who will unify and join with others because they would say, well, homosexuality and LGBTQ plus community and all that stuff is an abomination and is wrong. Um, and so there are many of us in the African American community who would join along with that for those reasons. Now, if you may have other reasons why you don't like it or whatever, but for many African Americans, they will say that it's based on religion. But the same religion is also the religion that told you that that said this about us, that we were inferior, that we were cursed, that we were supposed to be enslaved. And so how do you go from a demographic who the Bible was used to enslave us to basically doing the same thing to a different demographic? They're using the Bible to say that people in the LGBT community, plus community, or whatever, is an abomination and they should be treated not the same as the rest of us, right? And so again, this is not a conversation about being pro LGBTQ. What I am pro human. And I believe that everybody deserves the right to live the way they want to live as long as they're not hurting someone else. That's just my position. I am a 100% heterosexual, so it's nothing that. But I'm smart enough to understand what is going on as part of the programming. And so you see African Americans, and even to the point, not just the LGBTQ space or situation. There are African Americans who we've heard say that slavery was good because it brought us to Jesus. Now, is that not asinine? It is really asinine. But there are African Americans out there who believe that yes, that slavery to a certain extent was good and welcome because without that we would not have been exposed to Christianity. To me, that is the most one of the most ignorant statements that you can make. It shows your ignorance. It shows that you've never traveled. It shows that you've certainly never been to the continent of Africa, uh, and that you've never read anything. You know nothing about history and evolution and all of that. You have no idea of all of the great things that came from our ancestors on the continent that Europeans stole from us, the knowledge and the information that they stole from us. You're showing that you are ignorant to that by saying that. But yet, I've seen many black people stand on a stump and make these statements. And so yeah, and so there's this thing. Then there's other those of us who believe that we should assimilate into this um, Euro Christian society because again, religion is the most important thing. I'm Christian first, not understanding that this assimilation is really stripping us of our culture and making us more like them so that they feel comfortable with us acting and being like them. And so again, you are subjugating yourself to another culture that basically stole a lot of the stuff that they got from your original ancestors. And so, in an attempt to assimilate, for us to assimilate, we have to deny part of our culture and who we are and what we do so that we can make them feel more comfortable. And again, this is not generalizing all people that are not black. This is just the system, the people who are trying to do the things that they're trying to do. And so all of this stuff is connected. Christine said exactly. Let the pastor pay these bills since you listen and want to do whatever he says. There's only one man in the house, and it's not your pastor. Absolutely, absolutely, and that's how most men feel. Um, Amanda said, all is all it did okay, all it did was took us from one slave master and sold us for free to another slave master. Exactly, that's exactly what it is. We are so controlled by religion, and it's funny because other people know this about us. They study us. They know that we are so controlled by religion. And I got a few minutes, and so I'm going to end with this. and it might be controversial to some people. I am a huge sports fan, and I am an even bigger football fan. So I was certainly into the recent NFL draft that we had. And let me add this disclaimer: I have always been a fan of Deion Sanders from the time he was at Florida State. Uh, for the reason of him being Deion, him being what people would say cocky, but in my opinion, confident and able to back it up. And so when I look at his son, Shador, who for the most part, most experts had him as a first round pick, as the second or third best, certainly in most cases the second best quarterback, but certainly no worse than the third best quarterback. And for 5 or 6 quarterbacks to go before him, and I had a discussion with a good friend of mine and me and some other people, and what we said, we tried to tell this person was that this was really about controlling Shador and his opinion of himself. See, when a black man is confident and when a black woman is confident, uh, other people are threatened because now we're outside of that box that says you should remain docile and humble. Like, what's all of this humility, this humble shit? If I'm good and I think I'm good, then I should be able to express that. Because here's what happens on the other side when they express it, it's not viewed as being cocky. It's viewed as being confident. It's viewed as being a leader. It's viewed as being assertive. But if one of us who looks like us was to do that, then now we're cocky. Basically, what they're saying is that we're out of our place. There's a place for us to be, and when we're that confident in our abilities and who we are, uh, we're out of our place because they feel like that number one that we should always need them for something, and number two that we should feel humble and gracious that we are allowed to do the things that we're due. Well, this young brother said, I am confident in who I am. I have the stats to back it up. I went from Jackson State, where I put up great numbers, and I went to Colorado, who before then had a losing program for years, for a couple of decades. They had not. The year before, they won 2 games, and so this all ties back into the whole religion as part of the system. So they are able to use religion to keep us humble and keep us docile. Many of you out there know so many of your friends who are very religious and they are very humble and very docile and very meek. But guess what? I White Christians, evangelicals are just the opposite. They are not meek. They're not humble. They are assertive and aggressive and cocky, the whole 9 yards. And so why can't we be that way? Because they view us as if we're stepped out of our space, our box that we should be in. That is part of the religious programming that this religion does to us. Christine said, there is no religion greater than white supremacy, racism, according to counter racism logic. Um, you're right. White supremacy. It is about the it is about the is it about them maintaining their position in this country and by virtue of this country throughout the world. And they will use every tool, which includes religion, to do that. And to me, as an African American, Christian, I've asked many times, does that not cause you to question things? Because here's the thing: if religion and Christianity and even Islam was what it was, and this God or Allah, a God or Allah was who they were supposed to be, why is it that non-African Americans are not afraid of this and afraid of what's going to happen like we are? Like we're like, oh, I can't do this, I'm going to hell, or I can't do this, God's going to punish me. But many on the other side, they operate and act as if the things that we're afraid of don't exist. Would that not call the very people who taught you about this religion are doing things that you wouldn't do because you fear the punishment, right? You fear the retribution from this vengeful God. But yet you don't question when the collective of them for so many centuries have done those things. Black people would not dare treat white people the way they've treated us historically for fear of burning in hell. I mean, let's be truthful. We won't oppress another person, another group of people for fear of burning in hell. But yet others do that call themselves Christians or believers, and for whatever reason, it appears to me that there is no fear of burning in hell. So that would cause me to ask questions about this religion. Again, one of the other things that I've seen and I've examined and taken a look at being outside of this faith and this religion. Um, and so, yeah, we are pushing up on the hour. And let me see if there are any other comments or questions, but this has been great. This has been therapeutic to me. I've helped to get some of this stuff out that I sort of been reflecting on this journey for the last 10 years. I thank all of you for being on here today and engaging with me in this. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Certainly, I think I mentioned earlier, maybe before some of you guys came on, as you know, if you've been following me for the last couple of years, I normally take a break during the summer. And so I think we have one more show in May, and I think we'll be off or we'll be done until August sometime, and then we'll come back stronger in August. But I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be here, and I may do a show, 1 or 2 in those 3 months. But we usually do a lot of traveling. I sort of reflect on things and sort of refresh and get recharged things. And so we certainly we're doing a few trips. We got to go back to Atlanta, and we're going to Singapore and some other places. And so yeah, so we have one more show before the summer, and then we'll be off for the summer. But thank you all so much. Share, like, thumbs up, tell your friends. We are over 500 subscribers, which are all organic. Is one subscriber after the other. There is, everybody has come in. This has been organic, so I'm appreciative of that. But now we're able to do some things on YouTube because we are over 500 subscribers. And so I certainly appreciate all of you for that. But continue to tell your friends and your enemies about it, about this channel. Have them come on, and certainly we will talk. Christine has one last question. Question everything. And one last comment. Question everything, question mark. Have you noticed the relationship sports has to slavery? Yeah, we should do a show about that, Christine. We should certainly do a show about sports and relation between sports and slavery. I know there's a great book that Michael Roden wrote some years ago that really sort of blew up. It was about athletes being basically highly paid slaves, and they got a lot of pushback. But maybe I can find that book and do some reading on that book, and then we can have that. That'd be one of our topics that we certainly discuss. So certainly on that. Amanda said you'll be in Scottsdale Friday. Amanda, I'm supposed to go to Scottsdale. I have an opportunity to go to Scottsdale in July for a conference, and I'm trying to decide if I want to go. I've been before. I love it. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. We still may go. But happy birthday to you. Enjoy your birthday and enjoy Scottsdale. It should be beautiful. It should be perfect. I mean, it'll be. What, May? Oh, it's gonna. I know, but now listen, it's going to be 100 degrees. Literally, it's going to be 100 degrees here in Vegas on Saturday, and so Arizona is usually a little bit warm, a little bit warmer. So it might be 100 plus on Saturday, Friday, Saturday. So Friday's supposed to be, I think, 99 degrees here. Like literally, like it was 60 yesterday. It's in the 70s today, but it rained all day yesterday. It's been raining all day today. And so starting tomorrow here, it's going to be sunny and it's going to get warmer and warmer and warmer until it hits 100. But enjoy Scottsdale. I don't know if you've been before, but it is absolutely beautiful. We love it. We went a few years ago. We actually went for New Year's Eve one year, and it was literally freaking 90 degrees in January, but it was gorgeous. No humidity. We went hiking. It was great. So yeah, enjoy. Have a great time, and I will see all of you in 2 weeks. Yeah. Take care.